And this went on for like half the school day, just like watching this jacked man, obviously on steroids, tell us not to do drugs because it's bad, and then lift us in the air 12 times. I hope my parents are watching this. Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I like to talk about Taylor Swift, books, and things that make me mad. Please ignore what we've got going on here. It sprouted up overnight. You caught me at a bad time. This is going to be all the sus stuff that happened when I was going to school in the southern United States. So I'm from Oklahoma, before anybody comes for me. Some people might consider that the South. Other people consider it the Midwest. We're definitely like the Bible Belt. So it's just like not the, how you say, most educated state in the country. The quality is just not great. Every day I think about these things and I'm just like, what the hell was it? What even was that? What even was that for 12 years? Like, I've repressed a lot of these memories since I started and finished college, because college was just so much better of an experience. I mean, I would hope so. I paid a whole lot of money for it. But what were those 12 years for? Honestly, I learned way more in 4 years than I ever did in those freaking 12 years and had a way better experience. So I've just kind of bottled these up, but I wrote them all down for you guys today. So we're just going to do a few little story times. Feel free to share your experience down below. I think it's really interesting to see what everyone's experiences are around the world as far as education goes. It definitely could have been worse in my case, because while I did go to school in Oklahoma, my school wasn't too small, and I think that's where the really big problems start to happen. Let's dig up some of these suppressed memories. Some of these might get me heated, honestly. So some of the things that you guys may already know about Oklahoma. I know we made national news a few years ago because of all of the teacher strikes. We were at one point 50th in education in the United States. I think we're maybe like 6th or 7th now. We don't pay teachers like anything, so that's probably where a lot of these experiences stem from. It's above their pay grade, man. I know a tweet went viral a while ago that talked about how in Oklahoma, to get bonus points for class, you bring in tissues, because we're so undersupplied with like basic things like that that's the incentive. Like, you got to bring in supplies for the classroom and then you will get bonus points. The teacher ratios are like 38-1. I don't know how it is in the rest of the country, but I know that's not good. And most of the teachers are actually just coaches. And as I said, we're undersupplied. There's a lot of textbooks that are ripped up, missing covers. And of course, you guys know about the dress codes, I'm sure. I think that's kind of a national problem though, but I feel like maybe it might be a little worse in the South. It was like a huge deal. And all I am is boobs and legs. I am a 5'10" thick girl, okay? I had teachers always just up my ass about this stuff. And what's funny is one of them today, her daughter actually got a boob job. So, you know, don't hate what you pay for. Okay, so let's just get straight into these stories. I have 15 little anecdotes for you guys today. The first one is by far the best one, but also just terrible. I literally wrote down creepy PE teacher. I still remember this man's name. All right, so we had this PE teacher. I've tried to find him on social media so many times and I just cannot find him anywhere. He ended up not working for that school anymore. Don't know why, but I'm trying to figure it out. Looking back, he always struck me as a little bit weird, but like until this one day that I didn't remember until a few months ago. I was in first grade and we would only be in our gym class. He was also very particular about us not calling it gym class. We had to call it physical education. And if we didn't call it that, PE was fine, but like not gym class, or he would yell at us. And there was this other little girl in my class and she always came to school looking really cute. She would wear these like girly pretty dresses and her hair would always be done like in these really nice little Bo Peep type of curls or whatever. Like, her parents just like made sure she looked so cute. And we were in gym class one day and my PE teacher literally singled her out. We were just about to leave class, like class was almost over, and he singled her out and brought her up in front of the class and like joined arms with her. This is so uncomfortable. And was saying, this girl right here, let's call her Stacy. Stacy is one of the cutest girls in your class. She's so pretty. She always looks so good every day. When she grows up, she's going to be getting all the boys. She's so cute. All the boys are going to love her. She's going to be what every girl wants to look like. And as he's saying this to us, he's got his arm linked with her arm and she's just smiling and like kind of taking the praise, I guess. I mean, she was 6. I was 6. I remember seeing this and thinking like, oh my God, I wish I could look like Stacy. I want to be that pretty and get all the boys when I'm older and be this person that stands out because I'm so cute. But now looking back, in what world he thought this was okay to do. This was another one that I really repressed. As I said, I did not think about it until a few months ago, but I don't know, take that for what it is. If I ever find out why he quit teaching, I'll I'll give you an update, I guess. What was that? What was that? Parading her around the class, complimenting her on her looks. That's just so gross. And then you get older as a girl in the K through 12 education system, and then they tell you you can't wear tank tops, you can't wear shorts. I don't know, just the heavy value that they place on a girl's appearance, literally starting from first grade. And I didn't even realize, I don't know, how much of this stuff is just like subconscious things that we bury for years and then later end up putting pieces together of why we are the way that we were. Okay, number 2, this is a little one about my second grade teacher. No tea, no shade at her. Honestly, she was a pretty good teacher. When I was in second grade, my mom and I were making one of our trips to Ukraine. So I was going to be leaving school like a week before summer break began. And because of this, I became the like token Soviet show and tell piece, if you will. So my second grade teacher had me get up in front of the class and tell the students about where I was going. And before I did this little presentation, anybody in that class who I was friends with, I just told them I was going to Russia because nobody knows where Ukraine is. I don't think people still know where it is, so I would just say Russia. Anyways, so the teacher asks the class, and where is Nicole going for her summer vacation? And everybody yells, Russia. And she goes, Ukraine. And then she goes to the map to try to find Ukraine, and she can't find it. This is a teacher who has to like teach us geography. Honestly, if you're watching this teacher, seriously, no tea, no shade, but it's just like, you're supposed to be teaching kids where things are. So she goes to the map and she starts looking in Russia because she genuinely thinks Ukraine is like a region in Russia. If I was Southern, like truly Southern, this would be around the same time where I would say, bless your heart. Moving on, number 3. Oh my God. Okay, so I was in 4th grade during the 2008 election, and this was a very good opportunity, I admit, to teach 4th graders about the political process and just kind of start exposing them to how this works. A lot of our views at that time are kind of just us repeating what our parents were saying. Of course, I mean, I liked Obama because of my parents, but then I grew up to also still like Obama. So anyways, my 4th grade teacher was talking to us about the 2 different political parties, Democrats and Republicans, and one student asked her which one she is in, and she informed the student that it is not good to ask somebody what their political party is. It's kind of like asking a woman her age. I remember this so well. But then she said it's fine, like she doesn't mind telling us that she is a Republican. And I remember thinking, and this was such a like parental influence kind of thought, but I remember thinking like, of course, I really did not like this teacher. But that was my immediate reaction. I mean, looking back, I had a pretty good sense, honestly, because I remember there was a story she was telling us about how she went on vacation somewhere. I think it was either Puerto Rico or the Florida Keys, somewhere that's in the US, but like shouldn't be the US. I mean, none of this should be, you get what I mean. And she tells us this story about going on vacation there and how she wanted to buy something from a store and the cashier did not speak English. She was very upset by this. You know, this had her in a chokehold to that day, regardless of how long it had been since the vacation. She said to this cashier, I did not need a passport to come here. You will speak to me in English or not at all. But like angry, like how the influence, like this is honestly just really disappointing. And the fact that she's saying this to a 4th grade class, and there were students in there who had like Hispanic ancestry, who like spoke Spanish at home, who likely may have even had relatives who only speak Spanish. I'm done with that one. Okay, number 4 is about some of the stuff that we actually did in gym class. Sorry, PE. So most people think that PE is going to be mostly like prepping for track and field day, which is a thing we do here in the States where you like do a bunch of, I don't know, doggy like obstacle courses. You play tug of war with each other. I think there's jump roping involved, sprinting, things like that, and like where you pass the baton and like you sprint. However, there were a lot of weird things happening during this PE class. I remember we had to go geocaching. Geocaching is this thing you do, well, at least when I was learning it back in like the 2000s, he would give us this little handheld device that was kind of like a Nokia. I could not figure out how to use this thing, and we had to plug in coordinates to try to find things on the playground. I sucked at it, but like we spent like a week just doing this, and that was like physical education. You know, I'm not one to talk, but like I just feel like this is not the way to teach like one of the most athletically unhealthy states physical education. I just don't think that's what the curriculum should be. I mean, I hated running as much as the next person, but like geocaching. Another thing we did in gym class, we would have a lot of assemblies with like people coming in trying to like sell us stuff or get us to do fundraisers. But one of them was like top spinning, and we had a whole week of just top spinning competitions, like spinning like tops. But these ones were weird. These were like high-tech tops or something. Like they had this zip tie looking thing that you would started off with, I guess, and then we would sit across from each other on the gym floor, like in pairs of two, and do these little top spinning competitions, and whichever one fell over first, like that was the loser, and then whoever was the one left standing was like the winner or whatever, like whose top could spin the longest. This was my physical education. Meanwhile, my mom's telling me about how she had to like prepare herself for 2 months to like climb this rope or else she failed. But back to these whole assemblies. The top thing, I believe that was connected to one of the assemblies. Like there was some fundraiser we were supposed to do or were encouraged to do, but they also would have drug-free type of assemblies, like the Say No to Drugs. We had drug-free assemblies, and one of these was led by a whole team of bodybuilders that were obviously on steroids. So anyways, these bodybuilders would come in and they would be so energetic, ready to go, and they would talk to us about how, I remember this so clearly, one guy came in just completely jacked, and he talked about how he had never had a cigarette or a sip of alcohol ever in his life, and because of that he was 100% sober, and if he'd have had even one cigarette during his lifetime, he would then be 99% sober, and that's not as good, so we should just never. And then I feel like there was some sort of catalogs being distributed about how we should fundraise by selling cookie dough and get our school some money, and if we raised the most amount of money for the school, we would get to go on a pizza party in a Hummer limo, not even a real one. But while this bodybuilder was doing this presentation, he would call down volunteers from the student audience, and 2 girls came down, and he had one of those bars that I think you hook weights on the end of. I don't lift, obviously, but he had just like the empty bar thing with no weights on it, and he had one girl grab onto one side and the other girl grab onto the other side, and these were like 5th graders, maybe like 2 100-pound girls, and he had them hold on, and then he lifted them up with the bar, and this went on for like half the school day, just like watching this jacked man, obviously on steroids, tell us not to do drugs because it's bad, and then lift us in the air 12 times. I hope my parents are watching this. When you say this out loud, it's like, it sounds fake. There were a lot of assemblies like that, actually. I can't remember a whole lot of them because, as I said, I just haven't thought about this. I've just suppressed it. I don't know. What were they even talking to us about? I feel like it's maybe like subliminally in my head now, influencing my everyday life. Next, I want to talk about this little place called J.A. Bizztown. From my understanding, this might be a chain, but I know it was a place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where schools could go for field trips, and we would do this with the 5th grade class, so that was the only time I went. And it's basically this little community that you take kids to, and it's like, it's all indoors, but it's like different little buildings, I guess. Each student is assigned a career, and then they have to go to this little community and like learn to work 9 to 5s, and they would give us a salary, and we would get a little lunch break to go and buy food, and then we had a little bit of money left over to buy some little toys or souvenirs, but we had to be careful about spending our money because you know minimum wage is not that high. Even on the website of this business, how you say, it literally says it teaches you the skills needed for 40-hour work weeks. That is so interesting. Growing up, we think of the US as so superior, but like every nation is trying to further their own agenda, you know what I mean? Especially with the youth. Like while my mom was being told, oh, you have such good grades, you're the key to communism and collecting the harvest from the fields for free to be a good little future party member, I was working fake 9 to 5s in order to be a good little capitalist. I mean, it was kind of fun. We were all hyped for this, but like looking back, the career they gave me was a nurse, which is the same career my mom has. And I'm pretty sure that's what they did with all the students. And the more I thought about this, the more I feel like the conspiracist inside me was coming out, because it's like, you know that saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree? And when you think about like the way the class system is built, odds are your children will be like in the same wealth class or lower, so you might have the same career. Like a lot of that is generational. Were they really training us to like accept that? I don't know. Conspiracy? Maybe. I swear to God, I saw some article a while ago that was like, there was some like scandal with the owner or CEO. I can't find that article again, but like I swear to God, something weird happened over there with children. I'm not gonna go too into detail about what I think that was. This is all alleged because I genuinely can't find the article, but like I have this feeling that I read something really bad about them a while ago. And usually I'm right, actually, okay, because this old amusement park is reopening in my town again, and right when I saw the name, name, I was like, oh, that gives me bad vibes. That gives me really bad vibes. I'm not going there. And then I Googled it. A kid died on one of those rides. So I forget, but I don't forgive. Okay, number 7. This is just a quick note about one of our elective classes that was offered once we got to middle school. So the way my school system worked, once you got to middle school, you had your basic core subjects, math, science, literature, English, history, or geography, something like that. But then you would get 2 classes that you got to pick, and I would always be in art and choir. Those were like my holy duo. But some of the options were literally teacher aide or library aide. Like you would get graded on just like helping the teacher or like working in the library. I don't know, you can take that for what it is. But I remember when I brought my little elective choosing form home and my mom saw that that was one of the options on there that you could get graded for, she threw a fit. I was not allowed to select those for an elective, that's for sure. Honestly, my mom was pretty unhappy with most of my schooling. Oh my god, speaking of unpaid labor, this brings me to number 8. When I was a sophomore in high school, I took a chemistry class. That class was really hard. I mean, I think I learned a lot and it was something that would like prepare you for a college level chemistry class. My teacher was batshit crazy though. She let me and my lab partner catch the ceiling on fire. That's a story for another day. She was egging us on. She also would wear Crocs and like this cat sweater that smelled like cat pee and little double helix DNA earrings. This teacher decided she was going to volunteer us to collect all the recycled paper from all of the classrooms in the entire school. And this happened like maybe once or twice a week. Like it used up a lot of school time. The only person like tall and big enough to be throwing these giant trash cans full of paper, they were really heavy, was this one guy, and the rest of us would just collect the stuff, put it in dumpsters, take it outside. He would take the trash can from us, he would dump it in the dumpster, whatever. It was like a nice little cycle. But I remember there were days during December where it was like 30 degrees outside and he was standing out there for like 30 to 45 minutes just dumping these bins in there, and like for what? Like for what? Like aren't we supposed to be learning chemistry, like setting ceilings on fire? That was a little ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, it's not something that you can really complain about as a student because it's like you're getting out of chemistry, which I hated, but like that's just what we're doing instead of learning. Like I can understand now looking back why my mom was so mad all the time. The story is that when my mom was in school, there was a parent-teacher conference that her parents went to, my grandparents, and the teacher said to my grandparents, if there were more students like Allah, my mom, we would have already established communism. And so anytime my mom would criticize how I was doing in school, I would be like, okay, listen, I know I'm no key to communism, but like my grades aren't that bad. They never were that bad. They were always A's, but they weren't like good enough A's. Oh my god. Okay, next we're going into another little high school experience. I want to talk about the South's sex education, lack thereof, whatever you want to call it. Actually, what we had was more what I would call AIDS education. So there was a system going on where every 7th grade class would learn about AIDS. It was not sex education, it just wasn't. I'd love to hear your guys' experiences with sex education though, so let me know down below how that was and where you are. Anyway, so all the 7th grade students would learn about this, and you know who was teaching it to them? The high school sophomores. So think about this, okay? Most of the teachers are actually coaches because teachers don't make like any money. It's coaching where the money is. So the coaches would have this rule where if you wanted to coach a sport, you had to also teach a class because there just were no teachers. I essentially attended an athletic academy where they just kind of like taught classes as a side hustle, you know? So think about this system for a second with me here. It's coaches teaching 15-year-olds to teach the 7th graders sex education and like it's AIDS education. It's AIDS education. There was a lot of shaming involved around AIDS. Now that I'm older, I look back and I'm like, again, what the fuck? The premise essentially was that anytime we're doing things, I don't want to get demonetized, we need to be using protection. But of course, the only way to like make sure everything's 100% fine and we don't catch AIDS is abstinence only, which that's usually how it goes in the South. It's an abstinence only based education. However, I did learn about like dental dams, which I never heard of again after that. I don't know what that means. But the focus was so intensely on AIDS. Like no matter what you did, they even gave us different scenarios and we had to match cards to the scenario on whether it was a high risk activity, a low risk activity, or no risk, and pretty much anything that wasn't just like sitting and not touching anybody was classified as high risk because of what it could lead to. So they would give us a scenario like 2 people kissing and we had to classify it as high risk. That was high risk for AIDS. God, they could have sent someone into such an obsessive spiral. This is so sad. However, I guess the only good thing that can come out of a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds teaching a bunch of 12-year-olds about AIDS, sex, whatever, is that they're gonna be less homophobic, I guess, because there definitely was inclusion of like same-sex sorts of relationship and the risk factors of that. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of like education. It was just like, don't do any of this or you're gonna get AIDS. And it never was like, can I say this? Chlamydia, gonorrhea. It never was anything about that, which are so common, like, but also you just take one round of antibiotics and like get rid of it, I'm pretty sure. None of that was touched on at all. It was literally AIDS or nothing. Like, that was it. And I remember there was this one exercise where each student or whoever wanted to volunteer would tell the 16-year-old teacher, AIDS coach, like a list of things they wanted to do before they die, or give like one thing they wanted to do before they die, and that 16-year-old would write down on the board all of those things. There would be like 5 of them or something. And one of my best friends raised her hand and said one of the things she wants to do before she dies is sing on stage. She wants to conquer her fear of stage fright and like sing in a talent show, that sort of thing. So the 16-year-old writes down sing on stage in the list of things you would want to do before you die. And so once everybody has volunteered a thing they want to do, this 16-year-old is going through this list and crossing each one out after an explanation of why contracting AIDS will prevent you from doing that thing. It doesn't get any better than this, y'all. And so when she got to the part about singing on stage, she said, well, you will get AIDS and you will immediately become so sick that you will not be able to do this, and crossed it off. Like, have you never heard of Freddie Mercury? Like, have you never heard of Freddie Mercury? Oh my God, the more I think about these things, the more I'm just perturbed. Am I using that right? Another thing I wanted to touch on that I found out recently from people who do not live in this country is that this whole AIDS education thing had to be approved by the students' parents. So every student had to come back with a parental consent form, while in other countries, I guess they just teach sex education and that's it. Like, there's no like, are you guys okay with this as parents? It's just taught. But also, like, it was just AIDS. It was just AIDS. And the chokehold this had us in as like high schoolers, because everybody got this as a 7th grade student, unless your parent didn't sign to it, but most did. Once we got to high school and people started becoming promiscuous, any rumor about somebody would literally be that they had AIDS. It wasn't that they were like pregnant or they had STDs. It was literally like AIDS or nothing, just like they talked about in that class. And it was never slut shaming. It was literally AIDS shaming. And it's really sad the kind of stigma that ingrained in us, especially now that I'm older, as I said. That's so sad. AIDS is not a death sentence anymore. Well, especially like HIV. I think if you catch it early, it doesn't progress. But anyways, I just don't think that was right. Like, anything they said to us, again, as I said, Freddie Mercury, I wish I'd have said that back then. Oh my God. But yeah, that was the thing. Rumors going around. Everybody who's ever done anything, oh, you see 2 people kissing, AIDS. The moral of the story is be like Princess Diana. Shake people's hands when they have AIDS, because contrary to 16-year-old beliefs, that's not high risk. It's not high risk. Like, it's just not. Another story I have from 7th grade is some of those teachers were a little bit questionable. I do hold my school up to a bit of a higher standard because a lot of the surrounding schools had huge issues when it came to teacher-student relations. But the only experience I really had with this was one English teacher I had in 7th grade who supposedly was like looking down a lot of girls' shirts and like making them uncomfortable. It did happen to me a couple times, I will admit. And also when I transferred into his class, because I like didn't like my first teacher, I transferred into his class, and that was back when I was going by Nikki. I was having a whole identity crisis. But anyways, I introduced myself as that and he was like, that's such a cute name. What? Like, what? If you guys just wouldn't do these things, like, that'd be great. But another story that gets even worse is a teacher I didn't even have. This was a science teacher that a lot of girls didn't like. You know, I'm fine with giving people the benefit of the doubt, but also like, I believe them. I was eating lunch one day with my friends in the cafeteria, and this was back in 2012 when we all put feathers in our hair. We were running around looking like little mini Steve Tylers, and this creepy science teacher came up to me, supposedly creepy. He came up to me and was like, oh my God, that feather in your hair is so cute. And then he started touching my hair. That's where it really, like, I feel like I'm not being dramatic, because like, why are you touching me? Like, I'm 12. And this was in front of all of my friends and they all immediately like clammed up. And it was so awkward, and he just kept complimenting me and petting my hair, and I'm just sitting there, I'm just trying to eat my sandwich, bro. Okay, number 11. This one gets me freaking heated. I had a US history teacher, I think it was, in 11th grade, my junior year of high school, who loved to play devil's advocate. There was really not a whole lot of teaching going on in this class. So anyways, this teacher decided he really wanted to ask us these controversial questions about politics. This was around the age when we were starting to kind of form our own opinions, aside from like what our parents would say. So I guess like on one hand, this can be kind of beneficial. This is definitely the kind of mature discussions you have in college. He lived for us fighting with each other, like literal like hate speech being yelled in this classroom. There was a guy with a rat tail. I feel like that's all you need to know. If you don't know what that is, here's a picture of what that looks like. And he was the most misogynistic rat I've ever seen in my life. It literally became an argument of whether women should have rights or like whether women should be paid as much as men. It wasn't even an argument of like whether or not the wage gap exists. It was literally him just spouting like women are not worth as much as men. They should not be paid as much. I don't remember specifics of what he said because I would get so angry that I think I would black out. I could have taken him. That's the thing. He was so small. I could have ripped him a whole new one right under that rat tail of his, but I didn't. I would bite my tongue. I was not nearly as argumentative as I am today. And I would go home and I would bitch at my mom about this, and we would go like retail therapy, and I'd just be yelling in the middle of Bath and Body Works as I like smell the crisp morning air candle to try to calm myself down. But it was just every single goddamn day. And he would get in these arguments with other girls who like wanted to stick up for themselves, but it became such a like, I understand respecting other people's opinions and like differing views, but I cannot believe this history teacher man literally had the audacity to like sit there and have us hear him out because what he had to say was important, even if it's not the popular opinion. Like, that is ridiculous. You cannot just be yelling hate speech out here and attacking an entire half of the classroom. Like, honestly, I'm less mad at the kid and more mad at the teacher because like, what the fuck? Like, you're literally creating this place where people go to like not feel safe. He's just up here in front of this classroom spouting about how half of us are worthless. Like, that was honestly, I'm so mad at myself for not talking to a counselor or something. This was around like the 2016 election. That election happened during my senior year, and this was like during the primaries, I guess. You know, tensions were already not great. And I remember one of the girls asking him, who would like try to fight back to him. She asked him, so like, did your mom not raise you right? Like, who hurt you? You know, like, did she leave you? And he said, no, like, I actually love my mom. Like, she's the only exception to this or whatever. She's the only woman who's like worth anything. The fact that he literally was up there saying women are worth nothing, like they're not nearly as valuable as men, and like the teacher just let him talk about that because it was like an opposing view we need to listen to. I'm getting hot. Okay, I'm moving on from that. Speaking of the 2016 election, number 12, during the actual election, like in November of 2016, I actually missed that day, like the day after Trump was elected. I did not come to class because I was tired. Senioritis hit me really hard. I had beef with the attendance office like every other day. At least 3 teachers got like fired or reprimanded because they were yelling at the students and like arguing with them about the outcome, which is a little unexpected because you'd think there would be mostly Trump supporters here, which there are. So I remember my French teacher, oh my god, again, another part where I would say bless her heart if I was feeling comfortable with that phrase. She would regularly subtly bring politics into the teachings, and it was a French class where she was teaching French language, but like she would talk about different cultural values in France. That was the first time I found out in France billionaires are actually taxed. I did not realize that once you get to a certain income bracket here, you like win capitalism. So when she made that aware to me, I was very upset. For the most part, I agreed with her, but like she would literally argue with this one kid about Benghazi and like Hillary, and it was just like, this is not the place, ma'am. But I guess the day I wasn't there, she literally blew up on these students and she ended up getting fired. Oh my god. As I said, like, I agree with your views, but like, you're a teacher. Like, most of these kids are gonna change their views and like go back and forth for a while. Like, you really don't need to be doing the most over here, lady. And she was so nice. She was head of the equality club. Like, I liked her, but like, stop fighting with us. We're 16. And the very last day of the semester, we walked into class and all her stuff was like taken down off the walls, which was weird because you would leave it up for the summer and it would be there when you come back to teach the next year. And so everything was taken off the walls. And this one student asked her, where's all your stuff? Are you moving classrooms? And she said, no, I got fired. Silence. Oh my god, you could cut the tension with a knife. Speaking of teachers getting fired, I'm having really good segues over here. The thing with these teachers is once they got hired on, she was also a newer teacher, you essentially have to have your contract renewed every year for 3 years, and after 3 years you're pretty much like permanent. Like, you don't need confirmation at the end of the year on whether or not you will stay. So she was a newer teacher, so this was like her first year, I believe, and they didn't want to renew it because she had some beef with some students. My drama teacher ended up having the same thing happen to her, so I had my own grievances with this woman. I actually switched out of this class at the semester because I just couldn't take her anymore. Personally, we weren't vibing. We were not vibing. I got bronchitis during finals week of December. I could not come in for class. Like, I was hacking shit up, you know, on antibiotics, passed out, that sort of thing. And we were supposed to do a final presentation where we like wrote a play that was like a twist on some other story, but give it a tragedy ending. So we chose to do Rapunzel. I was Rapunzel, but I couldn't come in. And I was planning on being there for the final because I just had to like recover myself, you know, but I wasn't there there for a few rehearsals, and she was very upset about this. And she told all my group members to text me and say that if I was not going to be there for the presentation, she was going to give me the hardest written final she's ever made. Like, why you threatening me? Like, there's really no reason, ma'am. I ended up coming in and it being fine anyways, but like, she was so mad that I wasn't there for the rehearsals, and I had like sick notes. She was beefy, let me tell you. You know, lady, I'm here to pick my battles. Ma'am, I'm 16. So I switched out of that class, but I learned about some other issues she had with some other students. This is all alleged. This is not coming from my own experience, just what I heard from other people. They were doing Shrek that year for the musical. Yeah, when I first heard it, I thought it was a joke too. I was not in the musical because I was not about that 24/7 dedication. Okay, I was tired and in like choir and piano lessons and voice lessons and guitar lessons, I didn't have the time. Anyways, the kid who played Shrek had to wear a fat suit, I believe, and he got so hot under those stage lights during those really long rehearsals that he was throwing up, and the teacher pretty much was like, you can't go home, like the show must go on, like that's not how it works in real life theater, like you cannot go home. Like, I don't think that's legal. I don't think that's like, I feel like there's a rule that says if you throw up at school, like you have to go home, and he like was nonstop like heat throwing up, like that could have been heat stroke for all she knew, and she really was just, I don't know, she took her job very seriously. I believe it. Based on my experience, you know, I'm not confirming whether or not that's true because I don't know, I wasn't there, but oh, man, I believe it. And there was another student who was dealing with like family drama and couldn't make a few rehearsals or something like that, or somebody in his family was sick, but she basically was like, you have no time off because that's not how it works in real theater. That's a really good way to get people to not pursue this outside of high school, in my opinion. Okay, number 14, I want to talk about this little class I had to take called Personal Financial Literacy. A lot of you guys probably have this as a required class for high school. This was a class that was taught by a coach again, and basically the like hard rules of this class, the like main thing that I gathered from this was that we should never ever use credit cards. We don't need any kind of credit score for anything. When you're buying a house, you need to pay the entire amount in cash, not do a down payment, like just literally pay for the entire thing in cash. Don't do a mortgage. If you have to do a mortgage, make it a 15-year mortgage. Above all else, you must make donations before paying any of your bills. Like, you have to give money to get it back. This feels like some kind of manifestation technique I've learned in later years. Like, that's the way rich people are rich, is like they donate a bunch of their money. Anyways, I came home and I told all of this to my mom, and she was pissed again. And she started helping me build up my credit score once I got to college. That was weird. That was a weird class. I must admit, I didn't learn anything about like how to actually pay bills or like taxes or any of that. It was just like, do not get credit cards, donate as much as you can before you pay your bills. And that's about it. He would just kind of play Dave Ramsey videos about how to become a millionaire by donating your money. That was interesting. I must say, he was an interesting character. He was a coach. He would come in and he'd just be like yelling and like, let's go, let's donate money. Okay, CPR. I wanted to really briefly mention CPR. That became a requirement for all high school students kind of around my class. So I was like one of the first people to have that implemented upon. I actually missed the day where they did the full school CPR training thing, so I had to come to a makeup day. I stayed home a lot during senior year. Do you blame me after these stories? And so they didn't have enough dummies for us to CPR on, so I was splitting a dummy with my best friend. I still don't know how to do CPR, but I'm technically certified. That was not real. That was not real. So I had to split a dummy with my best friend, and we were like teamwork CPRing him with like one hand each. I don't think that actually teaches you anything, but that's just how it is in the South. There are not enough CPR dummies to go around. So as I was editing, I found this gem. This is from the actual presentation to show us what it would look like before we have to demonstrate our newly learned skills. Okay, and number 15, the very last little story I want to tell is about the assistant principal who told me to threaten this girl. So when I was taking art class my freshman year, my mom was getting really sick of me taking art class because she was like, what are you doing in this education? You are sitting and you are coloring in your coloring books. You are 15 years old, Nicole. It's time to move on. And so there was this girl I was sitting next to in this class, and okay, mom, you were right. There were a lot of dumbasses in that class. So there was this girl I was sitting next to. I never liked that girl. I mean, she was kind of okay in that class, but like too much for me. Some guy got like paint on her hand while we were working, and then she wipes it on my clothes, which is a whole lot different from having it on your skin. So I got pissed. Like, I got pissed. You have to ask for permission to go to the bathroom because this is the US, and I am obviously covered in paint, like my whole sleeve, and I was like, I need to go to the bathroom. And then I straight up said like, she wiped paint on me, and then I left. I like stormed out of there to wash it off. And so as I'm in the bathroom, the teacher is like yelling at this girl, and she ends up like, I don't remember what it was called because I never got in trouble somehow. It was because I never showed up. I never gave myself the chance. her parents were on the last straw with her. Like, she was getting in trouble all the time. In school suspension, I think it was called, where you have to like sit in a room by yourself and like do all your work there and you're not allowed to go to your classes. I think that's how it goes. But anyways, she had that happen to her a lot. Had that happen. She put it on herself. So this was like the final straw for her parents, and like I guess they got really mad, and like this girl said something to this assistant principal about how the semester before, like, I marked her hand with a marker or something like that. And so this assistant principal like calls me down and is mad at me. He's like bitching at me for like starting this or something. And then he literally tells me, like, if she ever wipes paint on me again or like marks me with anything or like whatever, I need to threaten to punch her in the face. And I was like, I don't think I need to do that. I had blue hair, spiky combat boots, 5'10". This girl's like 5 feet tall. Like, do you see that working out in my favor with the administration? And so I went home and I told my parents about this, and my dad was calling this assistant principal like every single day for a week and leaving messages with his secretary, and he never got back to my dad. My dad was like, I just want to talk, man. But if that just doesn't tell you everything you need to goddamn know. Also, this art teacher, he actually ended up getting fired too because he embezzled the school's money to buy alcohol. I could go all night. Okay, so that bitch who wiped paint on me, she was the reason I started taking drama instead of art. Once it hit my sophomore year, I decided use drama as an elective, which I had never done before. I'd always taken art, and my mom had convinced me, like, you need to get away from these dumbasses. I walk into my drama class and that girl is just sitting right there on the very first day in August, and I was texting my mom like, you're never gonna believe this shit. I mean, she didn't cause me any problems in that class. It was mostly the teacher, but like I tried to get away from you. I can't. But anyways, that's all the things that I can remember so far. Please let me know down below your experiences with K through 12 wherever you are. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below for more rants, maybe. I don't know. I feel like this is like the entirety of all of my problems for the last life. College is superior. High school is literally a drug trip. I will see you all next week for another video, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye, guys.